What does it take to navigate fake companies, fake leaders, and fake news? Try a little savvy. I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Shiv Singh, author, founder, and CEO of Savvy Matters. Welcome, Shiv.
Thank you for having me on, Tonya.
Absolutely. Why and what is Savvy Matters, and what prompted you to found the organization?
Sure. So I wrote this book, Savvy, Navigating Fake Companies, Fake Leaders, and Fake News in the Post-Trust Era. And out of the writing of that book, I saw that there was a lot of opportunity and a lot of interest in advising companies on how to fundamentally navigate the post-trust era. So that led to the creation of Savvy Matters.
So we're talking about the book you co-authored that just hit bookstores. When did what you call the post-trust era actually begin?
I wish I could pinpoint a year, a month, a day, and an hour, but unfortunately I cannot. It's something that we've been moving towards over the last couple of years. And behind the post-trust era, to unpack it, has been this emergent recognition that we're not trusting companies, we're not trusting brands, we're not trusting our leaders, and we're not trusting the media the way we once did. And part of that, and the reason why that's happening, is we don't know what to believe anymore. In many regards, we are living in a world where there's so much misinformation, so much confusion over what's fact, what's fiction, that we retreat to the familiar, to a smaller and smaller circle of friends and acquaintances, our tribes, if you may, who agree with our views, who support our views, and who, because they're familiar, we feel they're safe. The problem with that is, what that does in effect is make us even less trustworthy of any new or outside influence. So in a sense, this lack of information, this inability to tell fact from fiction, is making us distrust the unknown much more. And that's been developing over the last few years. The first sort of big milestone was actually the 2009 financial crisis, which was a time when Wall Street and Main Street fractured, and from there it's been building.
What role does social media play in actually damaging trust?
That's a really complicated question. And I say that because, social media, and whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, all the different platforms, at one level, they're amazing, wonderful, enabling technologies. They enable us to communicate in real time around the world, to share stories, to be in touch with friends and acquaintances. But unfortunately, there's also a dark side to it. And that dark side we saw during the 2016 presidential election, when bad actors and foreign agents used it to influence our points of views and play with our emotions and sort of play on our fears. And the other piece to it is an incredible amount of misinformation spreads through social media. And the way it spreads is it masquerades as fact, and it does so and appears to spread at the same time as you're absorbing information about a friend or a cousin who may have had a kid or whatever it may be, that we absorb the misinformation at the very moment when our guards are down, when we think we're in a safe environment. So misinformation spreads. That's a big problem on social media. The other part to it is I talked about our echo chambers and the filter bubbles. Those exist in social media more than ever. Our circle of friends provide, unfortunately, a skewed perspective of the world, a world where it's only people like us who think like us, who absorb information like us, who have the same view on companies and brands as us, who live. And therefore, we think that the entire world is like that when it's not it. So social media is fabulous as an enabling technology, and we love it through that regard. But it's been abused and weaponized by bad actors, and that damages us as individuals, it damages companies, it damages society, and arguably and frighteningly, it's also damaging our democracy.
Let's talk about that. The digital transformation of information sharing has made social media platforms, I don't know, like the town square of the 21st century. People shouting their messages in the physical town squares usually had some degree of First Amendment protection to their speech, but private companies who manage digital town squares have so far been actually exempt from that. Should large social media platforms be required to present all messages, even the ones with which they disagree?
That's a great question. And I would say that today, by and large, they present all points of views. Where it gets really tricky and complicated is, um, unlike a media company, it's the algorithms that are choosing what is presented, how much of it, and with what level of emphasis. In a bizarre way, the algorithms are the gods today. They tell us what to think, what to believe, what information to absorb, and they steer us towards information that to us is candy. The news and the information has become entertainment. The problem with when you eat only candy is you get diabetes and all kinds of things happen to you. And that's, in a sense, what's happening to our brains. The reason why many of the algorithms do this is because their primary motivation has been engagement, to get a reaction out of us, to make us addict so that we keep coming back for more and more. With that happening, all of a sudden, instead of the news and the information being shared on the platforms being about what we need to get or just all equal points of views, it's becoming we're getting information that we respond to more. And that's not necessarily a good thing. It's just too much candy, not enough of our vegetables in a sense.
Interesting analogy. Politicians and business leaders frame their messages to convey the points that matter most to them. When does framing cross the line into fakery?
I think that's another really good question. I would say that framing is human nature. Any conversation, we have context setting and we're framing. I mean, in this conversation, I'm doing that as well. You know, in our book, we talk about the extreme situations, you know, situations such as what went on at Uber with Travis and how he communicated and how it corrupted the culture and corrupted perceptions and changed behavior of employees in a negative direction. Or at Theranos, where Elizabeth Holmes did the opposite. She tried to control information and build this sort of artificial picture of what the company was. So they were doing a lot of framing and controlling and of different kinds to influence employees and influence business and the world at large. So it takes many different manifestations. The piece that I think matters most is that in this post-trust era, businesses have to frame as they always have, but they have to do so in ways that are much more evidence-driven and much more fact-based, using third-party sources, using experts, listening much more. Because when they say something, they're not heard and their point of view is not respected the way it once was. Because we think of the information through the lens of candy again. Is it sweet enough for us? And if it isn't, our first thought is to ignore it and step away. The business leaders, they can't make everything sweet. What they can do is move the conversation to being evidence-driven so that they're strengthening the integrity of those words and building their companies, you know, much more strongly.
Artificial intelligence is being used to create lifelike photos of people who never existed and invent video clips of public figures supposedly saying things in settings that never actually happened. How is the average person supposed to know when it's the real thing versus an AI powered fake?
Yes, deep fakes is a big problem. And I would suggest that we're just at the start of it. There are all kinds of AI-driven human and moral and ethical questions that we've barely started to address. You know, to give you an example of that, you know, the AI we work with, it all has bias built into it based on the data set. The deep fakes that are spread around, there's no control around them. There's no regulation. There's no self-censorship even. The technology is being built. And then because these are AI solutions, they keep building on each other and spreading like wildfire. So how do you protect yourself? How do you fight this? There are few fundamental truths that matter still. Firstly, fortunately, the AI is not that developed. An AI solution is typically very strong in one narrow domain. So one test is, if you're engaging with an AI engine or what you suspect may be an AI engine, try and ask it a question on a different subject. That's the first test to know whether it's an AI tool or a human being. Switch from talking about Idaho to talking about your favorite coffee. And if it can't answer that question, it's an AI engine. Another piece is to always trust but verify. Always have a few other people verify whether it's a piece of content or news or a voice, whatever it may be that's being shared with you, because that way you have other people who are using their own lenses to ascertain whether that's human driven or AI driven. The third piece is to pay more attention to the nuances of language. We're lucky in that, especially with the English language, it's a very complicated language. And yes, there are wonderful AI tools and they can write sentences and paragraphs, but they aren't that good at English, not as good as an adult who's got in a high school or college level education. So when you pay attention to the nuances of language, you can see the difference between the fake and the real as well.
Good advice. Shiv Singh, author, founder, and CEO of Savvy Matters. If somebody wants to get a copy of your book or just connect with you, how can they do that?
So the book is available for sale on Amazon and any major book retailer. I'd love to have a conversation with anyone who has questions. You can find me on Twitter at Shiv Singh, ShivSingh. I'm also on Facebook, just look me up, and of course on LinkedIn as well.
Thanks again, Shiv. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or go to my website, tonyahall.net. Thanks again.